The restaurant floated in the middle of Orion trade ring, shining like a glass jewel in space. Its name was Starfall Diner, and everyone knew it. Humans, aliens, traders, soldiers, everyone came here to eat. The lights were soft blue. Music hummed low. Plates moved on small gravity pads. And in the middle of it all worked ZYR. ZYR was an alien waiter from a weak, thin species called a Keth. He was tall but bent forward, with narrow shoulders and pale skin that changed color when he felt stress. Right now, his skin was a dull gray. ZYR had learned early one rule of the galaxy. Smile. Bow. Do not expect kindness. He carried plates to loud tables where rich traders laughed. They spoke over him. They waved him away without looking. Some left good tips. Most left nothing. Still, ZYR worked hard. He always did. That night, the restaurant was full. Every table was taken. Then the door opened, and the human walked in. He did not look important. No uniform. No guards. No shining tech. Just a man in a dark coat, warm boots, and tired eyes. The hostess looked at him, then at the busy room. Last table, she said, pointing. It was a small table near the wall. ZYR was sent to serve him. ZYR walked over, holding a menu pad. Welcome to Starfall Diner, ZYR said softly. May I take you? I already know, the human said. His voice was calm. Flat, not rude, not kind. I'll have the house meal. And water. ZYR blinked. That was rare. Most humans wanted extras. Yes, ZYR said, nodding. It will be ready soon. The human did not smile. He did not look around. He simply sat and waited. As ZYR walked away, he felt something strange. The human was quiet, but not weak. When the food was ready, ZYR brought the plate. Steaming meat substitute, grains, and sauce. Simple. Enjoy, ZYR said. The human nodded once. ZYR watched from across the room as the human ate. Slow, careful, like someone used to saving food. Other tables laughed loudly. A group of rich aliens made jokes about waiters. One pointed at ZYR and laughed. ZYR lowered his head and kept working. After some time, the human finished eating. He placed the utensils neatly. Then he stood up. ZYR felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment that always hurt. The human walked to the pay terminal, paid the bill. Then he paused. People nearby watched. Tipping was common here. Not required, but expected. The screen flashed. Tip, $0. A few customers gasped. One alien laughed loudly. Humans, he said. So cheap. Another shook their head. That waiter did all that work. ZYR stood frozen behind the service counter. His skin shifted darker. The human did not react to the whispers. He did not look at ZYR. He turned and walked toward the door. The door opened. Cold space light filled the room. Then the door closed behind him. For a moment, the restaurant was silent. Then the noise returned. Did you see that? No tip at all. Poor waiter. ZYR forced himself to move. He walked to the table with the empty plate. His hands were steady. His face was calm. Inside, something hurt. Why does it still hurt? He thought, you should be used to this. He reached for the plate. Then his fingers touched something. ZYR paused. Under the plate, taped to the table, was a small, thin object. His breath stopped. Carefully, he lifted the plate fully. The object stayed in place. It was not money. It was not food. It was metal, dark and old, with strange markings. ZYR's eyes widened. He quickly placed the plate back down, hiding it. His heart beat fast. What is this? He whispered. Around him, no one noticed. The manager was busy yelling at another waiter. Customers laughed and talked. ZYR leaned closer. The markings were not alien. They were human. Very old human. ZYR had seen something like this once, in a history file. Only once. His skin shifted from gray to pale blue. Fear. No, he whispered. It can't be. His hands trembled. Slowly, he removed the object and slipped it into his sleeve. No one saw. He cleaned the table like normal, wiped it, reset the chairs. But his mind was racing. The human had left no tip. And yet, ZYR felt like the floor beneath the galaxy had moved. He returned to the service area. Another waiter leaned close. Zero tip. Ho! The waiter said with a sad laugh. Humans. ZYR said nothing. He looked down at his sleeve. He felt the weight of the object against his arm. It was small, but it felt heavy, far heavier than money. Across the room, the door opened again. ZYR looked up. For just a second, he thought the human had returned, but it was someone else. Still, ZYR could not breathe, because deep inside, he knew something terrible and powerful had just begun. He had not been given nothing. He had been given something that could change everything, and no one in the room knew it yet. ZYR did not stop shaking for the rest of his shift. He moved from table to table like a shadow, doing his work, smiling when needed, bowing when spoken to. But his mind was no longer in the restaurant. It was inside his sleeve. The object pressed softly against his arm, hidden under the thin fabric of his uniform. Every few seconds, ZYR feared someone would notice. The manager walked past him twice. Security drones floated near the ceiling. Customers laughed, drank, argued. No one looked at ZYR. That was normal. Still, ZYR felt exposed. When the rush slowed, ZYR slipped into the back service hall. The lights there were dim. The walls were plain metal. No cameras covered the corner near the storage lockers. That was where ZYR stopped. He leaned against the wall and finally let out a long breath. With careful fingers, he pulled the object from his sleeve. It rested in his palm. It was small, flat, and made of dark metal. Not shiny, not new. Old, very old. Symbols were carved into it, clean, sharp lines that time had not erased. They were not decorative. They were official. ZYR's throat tightened. He knew these markings. Every service worker in the galaxy knew them, even if they pretended not to. Human authority markings. Not trade symbols. Not merchant seals. These symbols came from something else. From war. From command. From a time when humans were not everywhere. But when they arrived, everything changed. ZYR swallowed. No, he whispered again. Why me? He looked closer. On the back of the object was a thin line of text, carved so small it was easy to miss. ZYR activated the tiny translator implant behind his eye. The text resolved into simple words. Service recognized. Dignity granted. ZYR's leg weakened. He slid down the wall and sat on the floor. This was not a tip. This was not a gift. This was a token. A human service token. Something that had not been issued in generations. ZYR had stuttered them only once, during a required training session that most workers ignored. The instructor had laughed. These don't matter anymore, he had said. Humans don't use these now. But the file had not said they were invalid. It had said something far worse. They were absolute. A valid human service token could override contracts. It could trigger protections. It could force investigations. It could ruin lives. Or save them. ZYR curled his fingers around the token. Why would a human give this to a waiter? And why leave 0 credits? So everyone would see. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. ZYR froze. He hid the token back in his sleeve and stood up just as another waiter passed by. Manager's angry tonight, the waiter said. Says tips are down. ZYR nodded. Be careful, the waiter added. You don't want trouble. Trouble. ZYR almost laughed. Too late for that. The rest of the shift dragged on. Every sound felt louder. Every glance felt dangerous. ZYR kept seeing the human's face in his mind. Not cruel. Not proud. Just tired. Like someone who had seen enough of the galaxy to be done with it. When the shift finally ended, ZYR signed out and left through the employee exit. The station corridor outside was cold and gray. Ships passed behind thick glass windows. Lights flickered. ZYR walked fast. He lived in a small shared unit, rented by the week. No privacy. Thin walls. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it. Only then did he pull the token out again. In the quiet of his room, it felt even heavier. ZYIR placed it on the small table and stared. "If this is real," he whispered, "they will come." He knew the rules. Human tokens were monitored. Maybe not closely. Maybe not often. But if activated, or even detected, systems would respond. ZYIR wrapped the token in cloth and hid it under the floor panel. Then he sat on his bed and waited. Sleep did not come. Hours passed. Then, a soft chime echoed through his room. ZYIR's heart stopped. The wall panel lit up. Incoming system notice. ZYIR stared at it. Slowly, shaking, he stood and approached. The message displayed only one line. Service token signal confirmed. Below it, stand by. ZYIR backed away. No, 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 he whispered. He had not activated it. He had not scanned it. And yet, it had awakened. Somewhere in the vast human systems of the galaxy, something had noticed. ZYIR felt very small, very alone, and far away, in another part of the station, a quiet alert pinged on a forgotten terminal. An alert tied to a name that still carried weight. The alert reached places that had been silent for a long time. Deep inside the station's data core, an old human system woke up. Its lights flickered from dark to pale green. Service token, active. Origin, verified. Status, legitimate. No alarms rang. No public warnings appeared. That was how humans designed their systems. Quiet, certain, final. Far from ZYR's small room, the human walked alone through a docking corridor. His name was Ethan Cole. No one on the station knew it, and no one had asked. Ethan moved slowly, favoring his left leg. Old injury, never fully healed. Ships came and went around him. Engines roared. Cargo crews shouted. None of it touched him. He stopped near a wide window and looked out at the stars. Once, long ago, he had commanded fleets that filled that view. Now, there was only silence. Ethan closed his eyes. The diner replayed in his mind. The waiter, ZYR, the way the alien bowed too deep, the way he did not look up when insulted, the way he still said enjoy your meal like it mattered. Ethan's jaw tightened. Humans had learned many lessons in the galaxy. Most of them were written in blood. But the most important one was simple. How a society treats its weakest tells you everything. That was why Ethan had left 0 credits. He had wanted them to look, to judge, to laugh, so they would remember. Ethan reached into his coat and felt for something that was no longer there. The token. He had carried it for 20 years. A human service recognition token, issued only during the worst years of the war. Back when humans had needed allies. Back when dignity had been a weapon. He had earned it after pulling wounded soldiers, human and alien, out of a burning transport. They had tried to give him medals. He had refused. He had kept only the token, because it did something medals never could. It protected the powerless. Ethan opened his eyes. He wondered if the galaxy was ready to remember that. Back in his room, ZYIR sat frozen as the system notice faded. Stand by. That was all it said. No instructions. No threats. ZYIR pressed his back against the wall. He thought of his contract, his debt, his species record. Keth were not important. Keth did not receive protections. Except, ZYIR swallowed. Unless a human said otherwise. A sharp knock hit his door. ZYIR jumped. Another knock. Firm. Controlled. Service unit ZYR. A calm voice said from outside. Open the door. ZYR's heart pounded. This was it. He opened the door slowly. 2 figures stood in the hall. Not security. Not police. They wore plain clothing, but their posture was perfect. Human posture. May we enter? One asked. ZYR nodded without speaking. They stepped inside and looked around the small room. One of them glanced at the floor panel. ZYR's chest tightened. You received something tonight, the first human said. Something placed under a plate. ZYR could not lie. Yes, he whispered. The human nodded. You did nothing wrong, he said. In fact, you did everything right. ZYR's eyes filled with confusion. Why? ZYR asked. Why me? The humans exchanged a brief look. Because someone remembered, the second human said. They turned to leave. Wait, ZYR said. Am I in danger? The first human paused at the door. No, he said. Others are. The door closed. ZYR slid down to the floor, shaking. Across the station, Ethan Cole boarded a small ship. As he sat down, his terminal chimed softly. One message. Token status. Accepted. Next phase. Pending. Ethan exhaled. Good, he said quietly. The ship's engines powered up. And somewhere between lore and memory, the galaxy began to shift. The next morning, Starfall Diner opened like nothing had changed. The lights came on. The music hummed. The smell of cooked food filled the air. But for ZYR, everything felt wrong. He stood behind the service counter, hands folded, skin a nervous pale shade. The token was no longer under his floor panel. The humans had taken it. Also, he thought. Focus, the manager snapped. Customers are coming. ZYR nodded and stepped onto the floor. The first hour passed quietly. Then the air shifted. ZYR felt it before he saw it. The door slid open, and 3 figures entered together. They did not wear uniforms. They did not smile. The room slowly went silent. They were human, not ordinary humans. These ones moved like gravity followed them. Every instinct in ZYR screamed authority. The manager hurried forward. Welcome to Starfall Diner, he said loudly. May I? One of the humans raised a hand. The manager stopped mid-word. We're not here to eat, the human said calmly. We're here to observe. Observe. That word chilled the room. The humans spread out, standing near different tables. They said nothing. They watched everything. ZYR served drinks with shaking hands. Every step felt heavy. Then one of the humans spoke again. Service Unit ZYR. ZYR froze. Yes, he said softly. Please join us. All eyes turned to him. Whispers spread. The manager's face drained of color. ZYR walked forward, heart pounding. The human looked directly at him. No bow, the human said. ZYR hesitated. No bow, the human repeated. Slowly, ZYR straightened his back. For the first time in his life at work, he stood tall. The human nodded. Good. He tapped a small device on his wrist. A soft pulse passed through the room. Every table terminal lit up. Galactic service override. Active. Gasps filled the diner. The manager stepped back. What is this? He demanded. The human turned to him. A lawful review, he said, triggered by a valid human service recognition token. The manager laughed nervously. That system is old, he said. It doesn't apply here. The human's eyes hardened. It applies everywhere. Another tap. The air shimmered. A projection appeared in the center of the room. The image of the token floated there, dark metal, worn edges, human markings glowing faintly. ZYR's breath caught. The human pointed at ZYR. This individual was issued dignity recognition under human law. The room erupted. That's impossible. He's just a waiter. That species has no status. The human raised his voice, just slightly, and the room fell silent. Human law does not recognize, he said. It recognizes service. The manager shook his head. This will ruin my business, he said. The human looked at him coldly. Your business, he said, has already ruined lives. Another human stepped forward. Records show repeated violations, she said. Unpaid overtime, verbal abuse, contract manipulation. The manager stammered. We followed galactic norms. Galactic norms, the first human replied, are not the same as justice. The projection shifted. New text appeared. Protected individual, ZYRR of Keth. Status, active. ZYRR felt dizzy. Protected. The word did not feel real. Effective immediately, the human said. ZYR may not be threatened, punished, or dismissed. The manager opened his mouth. The human held up a finger. Any attempt will trigger escalation. Silence. The human turned back to ZYR. Do you understand? ZYR nodded, unable to speak. Good, the human said, because this is only the beginning. The humans began to leave. As they reached the door, the manager shouted, "This is unfair." The human stopped. He looked back once. "No," he said, "this is overdue." The door closed. The diner stayed frozen. Slowly, customers began to whisper again. ZYR stood in the center of the room. For the first time, no one laughed. For the first time, no one ordered him to bow. And deep in the station systems, a rule long ignored had been restored. A rule that did not care about profit. A rule that did not care about fear. A rule that said, respect is not optional. Staff or diner did not recover. It froze. Customers sat with drinks halfway to their mouths. A server dropped a tray, and no one laughed. The manager stood stiff, his face pale, eyes darting between the tables and the door the humans had just used. ZYIR was still in the center of the room. Protected. The word echoed in his mind. A rich trader near the window finally spoke. "This is a joke," he said. "Humans don't control this station." No one answered him, because the air shifted again. This time, it was heavier. The lights dimmed. Every terminal chimed at once. A deep, neutral voice filled the room. Galactic Oversight Link established. The walls shimmered. A large hologram formed above the dining floor. Not human. Not alien. The Galactic Oversight Council interface. People stood up in panic. This level of review, the voice continued, is triggered only by Tier 1 legal authority. Tier 1. That meant war treaties. Founding laws. Unbreakable systems. The manager collapsed into a chair. A council symbol rotated in the air. Protected individual ZYI of Keth is now under joint human galactic jurisdiction. ZYI's knees weakened. Joint jurisdiction meant something terrifying and powerful. No local authority could touch him now. The trader who had laughed earlier stood. "This is madness," he shouted. "One waiter." The hologram turned toward him. "Correction," the voice said. "Not one waiter. One precedent." The word spread through the room like ice. Precedent. That meant others could follow. The manager found his voice again. "You can't do this without proof," he said desperately. The hologram shifted. Data streams appeared. Contracts, recordings, timestamps. Footage of insults. Logs of unpaid hours. Audio of threats. The room went silent again. Every ugly moment was there. The council voice spoke softly now. Human service law was designed for this purpose. It said, to protect those whose suffering becomes invisible. The trader sat back down. ZYR felt eyes on him. Not mocking eyes. Afraid ones. Then a new message appeared on every screen. Query, identify human issuer. The room held its breath. The manager whispered, "Who did this?" The hologram paused, then answered, "Issuer confirmed, Ethan Cole." Some humans in the room gasped. Others went very still. That name meant nothing to most aliens. But to humans, it meant something else. A human near the bar stood slowly. "No," he said, "that's not possible." The council interface displayed a short profile. Ethan Cole. Status, retired. Clearance, command level, dormant. Service record, classified. The word classified glowed. Silence crushed the room. The manager whispered, "He was just a customer." The council voice replied, "He was observing." ZYR remembered the tired eyes, the careful way the human ate, the calm way he walked out. Not weak, controlled, a former commander. The hologram shifted again. "Notice," the voice said, "further actions pending arrival of human representative." A countdown appeared. ETA, 12 minutes. Panic spread. "What happens in 12 minutes?" someone asked. No one answered. ZYR stood still. He did not feel brave. He felt small. But something inside him felt solid. For the first time, the galaxy had stopped moving around him. It had noticed. And somewhere on the station, a human ship was turning back. 12 minutes felt longer than ZYR's entire life. No one spoke. No one ate. Every second ticked loudly on the countdown hovering above the diner floor. 1 minute and 12 seconds. 1 minute and 11 seconds. The manager wiped sweat from his face. Customers avoided eye contact. Security drones floated at the edges, inactive but alert. ZYRR stood where he was told to stand. Not ordered. Told. That alone felt unreal. Then, the door slid open. A wave of silence rolled through the room. The human stepped inside. Ethan Cole. He looked exactly the same. Same worn coat. Same slow walk. Same tired eyes. But now, people saw him differently. He was not just a customer. He was a reason the room was holding its breath. The countdown froze at 47 seconds. A calm voice echoed. Human representative on site. Ethan did not look at the hologram. He did not look at the manager. His eyes went straight to ZYR. ZYR felt his chest tighten. Ethan walked toward him. Each step was steady. Not rushed. Not proud. Just certain. When he stopped in front of ZYR, he spoke softly. Did they treat you fairly after I left? ZYR swallowed. They did not touch me, he said. Ethan nodded once. Good. The manager rushed forward. Sir, this is all a misunderstanding. Ethan raised a hand. The manager stopped like he had hit a wall. Ethan turned slowly. I paid for a meal, he said. I did not pay for excuses. The room felt smaller. The hologram brightened. Commander Cole, the council voice said, do you confirm issuance of service recognition token? Yes, Ethan replied. Do you confirm intent? Yes. State intent. Ethan looked around the room. At the laughing trader. At the bowed waiters. At the manager who never listened. Then he looked back at ZYR. My intent, Ethan said, was to remind this place what service means. He turned to the hologram. And to remind the galaxy what humans promise. The council paused. Proceed, it said. Ethan reached into his coat. He pulled out a second object. Larger than the token. Shaped like a thin data slab. Gasp spread. That's a command seal, someone whispered. Ethan placed it on the table nearest him. I am activating dormant authority, he said. The room shook slightly. Command clearance temporarily restored. The system announced. ZYR's legs nearly gave out. The manager fell to his knees. Ethan spoke again. ZYR Keth. ZYR straightened. Yes. You did your job, Ethan said, even when it cost you. He turned to the room. That earns respect. Ethan faced the council interface. I request full review of all service contracts on this station. The room exploded into noise. That's millions. You can't. The council voice cut through them. Request accepted. Screens across the diner flashed. Station-wide service audit. Initiated. The noise died instantly. Ethan picked up his command seal. He looked tired again. Humans are loud in war, he said quietly. But this is what we do after. He turned back to ZYR. Your life is about to change, Ethan said. ZYR whispered. Why? Ethan met his eyes. Because dignity should never depend on tips. The room was completely silent. And for the first time, the galaxy listened to a human not as a conqueror, but as a witness. The order did not end when Ethan Cole left the diner. It spread. Across the station, screens lit up in offices, kitchens, loading docks, and service halls. Contracts were frozen. Accounts were locked. Investigations began. Quietly, thoroughly, human style. Starfall Diner closed that same day. A simple notice appeared on the door. Temporarily closed for compliance review. The manager was escorted out. Not arrested. Just removed. That hurt more. ZYR stood outside the diner and watched the lights go dark. He did not feel happy. He felt steady. 2 days later, a message arrived. Transfer offer. Human Sector Service Program. ZYR read it 3 times. Housing. Training. Legal protection. Choice. That last word made his hands shake. No one had ever offered him choice before. He accepted. On the day ZYR left the station, he stood at the docking gate with a small bag. The galaxy moved around him like always, but it no longer pushed him aside. A familiar human voice spoke behind him. You stand taller now. ZYR turned. Ethan Cole stood there. No coat this time. Just a simple jacket. ZYR bowed, then stopped himself. Ethan smiled slightly. Better, he said. ZYR hesitated. I never thanked you, he said. Ethan shook his head. You already did, he replied. You kept working. They stood in silence for a moment. Then ZYR asked, why leave 0 credits? Ethan looked out at the ships. Because money ends conversations, he said. 0 starts them. The boarding call sounded. ZYR picked up his bag. He paused. I will not forget, ZYR said. Ethan nodded. Then it worked. ZYR walked onto the ship. As the doors closed, he looked through the window. Ethan stood still, watching. The ship pulled away. Weeks later, changes rippled outward. Other workers spoke up. Other tokens surfaced, old, forgotten. Other audits began, not because humans forced them, but because people remembered. And far away, on a small human network channel, a single line circulated quietly. He left a $0 tip and paid the highest price of all. Respect. The galaxy did not change overnight, but it tilted, just enough.